You see that green siren logo everywhere, right? On pretty much every corner, from Seattle to Shanghai. But have you ever stopped to think about how Starbucks became, well, Starbucks? Believe it or not, this coffee giant started out as something completely different. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on how a simple idea got totally flipped on its head by one guy's trip to Italy. So, how in the world did one little shop that only sold coffee beans, by the way, explode into this global empire with, what is it now, over 32,000 stores? I mean, that's just mind-boggling. And that's exactly the story we're digging into today. It's a wild ride full of big vision, a crisis that almost killed the company, and one of the greatest business comebacks ever. All right, so to really get this, we've got to go way back to the beginning. Let's set the scene. Seattle, 1971. Okay, so the first Starbucks, it was started by a couple of teachers and a writer, and their whole idea was super simple, almost academic, you could say. They wanted to sell the absolute best, highest quality, fresh roasted coffee beans. That's it. No lattes, no cappuccinos, none of that. You couldn't even buy a cup of coffee there. Their whole mission was to teach people about great coffee so they could go brew it themselves at home. A totally different world from the Starbucks we know, right? But, that original vision? It was about to get a major, major shakeup from a new guy with a completely different idea. This is where the story takes a huge turn. This is where Howard Schultz enters the picture. So, Schultz comes on board in '82 as the marketing guy, but just 1 year later, he takes a business trip to Milan, Italy, and that trip changes everything. He walks into these Italian coffee bars and he's just blown away. It wasn't just about the coffee, it was the community, the vibe, the whole experience. He comes back to Seattle totally fired up with this new vision, but the founders, they hated it. They shot him down. So what does he do? He leaves, starts his own coffee bar called Il Giornale to prove his idea could work. And then, and this is the crazy part, he comes back a couple years later and with the help of investors, buys the whole company for $3.8 million. Talk about a power move. So what was this game-changing idea he had? It all boiled down to this concept of the third place. Think about it. You have home, that's your first place. You have work, that's your second place. Schultz realized these Italian coffee bars were a third place, a comfortable, social spot in between where people could just connect and hang out. It wasn't about grabbing a quick caffeine fix, it was a destination. And right here, this is the core of the conflict. The founders were running a retail store. They were selling a product, beans. But Schultz, he wanted to sell an experience. They were all about coffee at home. He was all about creating a home away from home. This wasn't just a small disagreement. It was a fundamental clash of visions. And it's why he had to leave before coming back to buy them out. So with Schultz at the helm, the company was completely reborn in his vision. And this is when the explosive growth really began, all built on this idea of selling something more than just a cup of coffee. So how did he actually pull this off? Well, he built the whole thing on what he called the Starbucks experience, and it really came down to three key things. First off, the coffee itself. It still had to be the best quality, hands down. But just as important were the people, and this was huge. He didn't call them employees, he called them partners. He wanted them to feel a sense of ownership, and he invested a ton in their training and benefits. And finally, the stores themselves. They were obsessively designed to be that comfortable, welcoming third place. Everything from the lighting to the comfy chairs to the music, it was all part of the plan. And did this strategy work? Oh boy, did it ever. The results were absolutely staggering. Schultz basically took a page out of the McDonald's playbook for rapid expansion. I mean, get this. They went from just 17 stores in 1987 to over 15,000 stores across the globe by 2007. They went public, had their IPO in '92, and by '96 they opened their first international spot in Tokyo. That proved this third place idea wasn't just an American thing. It worked everywhere. Okay, we're right in the middle of this incredible growth story. If you're finding this fascinating, now would be a great time to hit that subscribe button. But definitely don't go anywhere, because there's a huge twist coming up. It turns out all that insane growth came with a hidden and pretty bitter cost. So by the mid-2000s, things started to go wrong. The Starbucks empire started showing some really serious cracks. And ironically, the very thing that made them so successful, that rapid growth, was now threatening to destroy the soul of the company. And if you want to know just how bad it got, look no further than this number. In one single year, 2007, the company's stock just cratered. It dropped by 40%. That's a massive red flag. Both Wall Street and the customers were screaming that something was deeply, deeply wrong. So what was going on? Well, the problem had a few different symptoms. For one, they had expanded so fast, they were basically tripping over themselves. They'd open a new store that would just steal customers from another one down the street. They were cannibalizing their own business. And the whole Starbucks experience, it was getting watered down. The focus shifted from that personal connection to just speed, speed, speed. They lost, as Schultz called it, the romance and theater of making coffee. And because of all that, the brand started to feel cheap. People started thinking of Starbucks less as a special treat and more like just another fast food joint. And you know who saw this most clearly? Howard Schultz himself. He came out and diagnosed the problem with some pretty brutal honesty. He said the company had gotten fofo, soft, flabby, from all its success. It had lost its edge, and he knew it was on him to fix it. And that's exactly what he did. In a really dramatic move, the guy who built the whole empire came out of retirement and stepped back in as CEO in 2008. He had one single mission: to save Starbucks from itself. And his turnaround plan was, well, it was radical, and for a lot of people, pretty painful. First, he did something nobody thought possible. He closed almost 900 underperforming stores. I mean, that's a complete 180 from their old growth-at-all-costs strategy. But then came the legendary move. He shut down every single Starbucks in the US for one evening. Why? To retrain all 135,000 baristas on the art of espresso. The message couldn't have been clearer. We're going back to basics. Quality and the customer experience are number one again. And you know what? It worked. This incredibly difficult turnaround didn't just save the company. It paved the way for Starbucks to completely reinvent itself for the modern digital age. See, the Starbucks of today isn't just about going back to the old days. It's about blending those core values with brand new tech. Their mobile app, for instance, is an absolute powerhouse for mobile ordering, payments, and that rewards program everyone loves. They even built an AI platform called Deep Brew that uses data to give you personalized offers. And on a global scale, they got way smarter about adapting to local culture. So a Starbucks in Tokyo feels very different from a Starbucks in, say, Texas, and that's by design. So after all that, when you boil this whole incredible story down, what are the big money lessons we can take away? Well, first, it's that selling an experience will always be more powerful than just selling a product. Second, you can never ever let your growth make you forget your core values. Third, real leadership means having the courage to take drastic action even if it's painful. Fourth, you have to constantly adapt and innovate or you'll be left behind. And finally, and this is so important, remember that your employees, your partners, are the face of your brand. They're your most important ambassadors. I mean, what a story, right? From one tiny shop selling beans to a global icon to a company that lost its way and then thought its way back. It's just remarkable. So I've got to ask you, what's your biggest takeaway from the Starbucks journey? Drop a comment below and let us know. And hey, if you learned something new today, do us a favor and hit that like button. All right, that's it for us this time. Thanks so much for watching Money Lessons by History. We'll see you in the next one.